Back in 2013, when I was 17, my family was looking to buy a house. The place we found was a beautiful two-story home sitting on the edge of a dense forest, with a small creek running behind it. It was the kind of house you'd expect to see on a postcard, with a wraparound porch and big bay windows. The owner, an older man, met us there to give us a tour. He seemed friendly, laughing and chatting with my parents about how he had built the house himself. I stayed back, scrolling through my phone, half listening. Then, in the middle of the conversation, something changed. The man turned his head slightly away from my parents, and his entire expression shifted. One moment he was a kind old man. The next, his face contorted into the most hateful, sinister scowl I'd ever seen. His eyes went cold and hollow, his lips pressing into a tight, thin line. It was so fast, so unnatural, like something inside him had momentarily slipped through the cracks. I don't think he noticed me watching. My head was down, so he probably assumed I wasn't paying attention. But I saw it, and it made my stomach drop. As quickly as it appeared, the expression vanished, and he turned back to my parents, smiling again as if nothing had happened. The air around me felt heavier, thick with something unspoken. I tried to shake it off, but it clung to me like a shadow. Later, I told my mom about what I had seen. She frowned, called it weird, but brushed it off. We bought the house. A week after we moved in, my family went to church. I stayed home. It was a stormy Sunday morning, rain pattering against the windows, wind howling through the trees. Around 11 a.m., a loud banging noise started outside, rhythmic, heavy, coming from the side of the house. I was on the second floor, on the opposite side. My first thought? The wind? The storm was bad that day, after all. The banging stopped after about 5 minutes. Then, 10 minutes later, I heard footsteps downstairs. Not just random creaks, actual footsteps. Slow, deliberate. My blood ran cold. Chairs scraped against the floor. The kitchen cabinets creaked open. The fridge door hummed as it swung wide. I froze, heart pounding. Every horror movie I had ever seen told me exactly how this was supposed to go. Still, I moved as quietly as I could, locking my bedroom door, grabbing the baseball bat I kept in my closet. My hands were shaking as I dialed 911. My voice barely came out when I whispered my address. The operator told me someone was 10 minutes away. Then I heard them moving toward the stairs. The floorboards groaned under their weight. The steps were slow, methodical. I could track exactly where they were. When I texted my mom, she said they were 30 minutes away. I was alone, trapped. A 5'2", 100-pound girl with nothing but a bat, listening to a stranger make their way toward me. My breath felt too loud, my heartbeat slamming against my ribs. Then, the footsteps stopped. Right outside my door. The doorknob turned. It didn't open. It was locked. Whoever it was stood there, just breathing. Heavy, slow, deep inhales, long exhales. I could hear it clear as day. They weren't trying to break in. They were just standing there, listening. I squeezed my eyes shut, gripping the bat tighter, waiting for the inevitable. 10 seconds. 15. Then, footsteps again. Back down the hall, down the stairs. The back door creaked open, then silence. 3 minutes later, red and blue lights flashed outside. The 911 operator asked if I could let the officers in. I knew he was gone, so I bolted down the stairs and unlocked the front door. The police searched the house. No one was there. No signs of forced entry. No broken windows. Nothing. When my mom arrived, she was pale. The first thing she did was turn to my stepdad and ask if he had changed the locks. He hadn't. Then we noticed something. The hallway upstairs, the one leading to my room. My mom had vacuumed it that morning, and yet there were footprints. Big ones, bigger than anyone in our house, and they stopped. Right outside my door. We changed the locks that night, but that didn't stop the weird things from happening. Doors would be unlocked in the morning when we were sure we had locked them. Objects would go missing, only to turn up in strange places. I started hearing knocks on the walls late at night. 3 short, deliberate knocks, always around 3 a.m. The air in my room felt heavier, suffocating. One night, I woke up to the sound of my closet door creaking open. I lay frozen, barely breathing. The darkness inside was impossibly deep. A shape stood there, not a person, a shadow, darker than the rest of the room. It didn't move, but I felt it watching. I shut my eyes and stayed that way until morning. The next day, I moved my bed against the closet door. A year later, we got a call. The old owner had died, and the strange occurrences, they stopped. But I still wonder about that day. The expression on his face, the footprints, the knocks, the thing in my closet. Had it been him? Had it been something else? I don't know. But I do know one thing. Always change your locks. The first few days in the old farmhouse felt like a fresh start. The quietness of the countryside, the way the wind swept across the fields, and the sight of the distant hills bathed in the evening glow all seemed perfect. But there was something else, something unsettling just beneath the surface. Maybe it was the eerie way the trees whispered when the wind blew at night, or how the floorboards creaked even when no one was walking on them. At first, I told myself it was just an old house settling, nothing more. A few days after moving in, my parents had to go to work, leaving me alone for the weekend. My brother was home, but as usual, he was in a deep sleep that nothing short of an earthquake could wake him from. I didn't mind. A whole day of uninterrupted YouTube and snacks sounded like a dream. The dogs kept me company, and I felt safe enough despite the isolation of the house. As the sun began to set, I settled into my room upstairs. The golden hues of the sky slowly faded, and soon the fields outside were swallowed by darkness. That's when I saw the headlights. A car, moving slowly down the long, empty road leading to our house. My stomach tightened. No one ever came down this road unless they had a reason to. I tried to convince myself it was just the neighbors returning to get the last of their things. But something about the way the car moved felt wrong. It wasn't just passing by, it was creeping, hesitating. Minutes later, my youngest dog started barking downstairs, a sharp, frantic sound that sent chills down my spine. I hesitated before going downstairs. The house was dark, only a few lamps casting weak pools of light in the living room. I reached the window and pulled the curtain aside, just enough to see outside. A man stood just beyond our garden gate, staring at the house. The gate was open, swinging slightly in the evening breeze. The car's engine was still running. My heart pounded as I realized he wasn't looking at the house. He was looking through the upstairs windows, searching. Then, as if he felt my gaze, he turned and locked eyes with me. For a long moment, neither of us moved. His expression changed, shock flickering across his face before he turned and bolted toward the car. Panic surged through me. I ran upstairs, shaking my brother awake. By the time we got back to the window, the car was turning around, struggling in the narrow space before finally speeding down the road and disappearing into the night. I called my parents. When they arrived home an hour later, they dismissed my fear. Probably just someone lost, they said. Nothing to worry about. But I knew better. 3 days passed. At school, I overheard friends talking about a string of robberies in isolated farmhouses. My blood ran cold. Whoever that man was, he wasn't lost. He was looking for an empty house, an easy target, and I had been standing right there watching him. That night, I made sure every door and window was locked before I went to bed. I kept my phone charged and within reach, but sleep didn't come easily. Every little sound, the wind rattling the old windows, the distant howl of a coyote, made me sit up, heart racing. Then, something new happened. I woke up in the middle of the night, not sure why. The room was pitch dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of the moon filtering through the curtains. My eyes adjusted slowly. That's when I saw it. A shadow, standing outside my window. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. The silhouette was tall, unmoving. My window was on the second floor. There was no way anyone should be standing outside it. But it was there. A dark figure, watching. I blinked, and it was gone. I lay awake the rest of the night, my mind racing. Was it a trick of the light? My imagination? Or had he come back? From that night on, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The dogs would suddenly growl at empty doorways, their ears perked as if listening to something I couldn't hear. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, I'd hear soft creaks in the hallway outside my room. I told myself it was just the house settling. But some nights, I swore I heard footsteps. A few years ago, I was renting a small house on the outskirts of a quiet town in Oregon. It was the kind of place that felt secluded enough for peace, but not too far from civilization. The house sat on the edge of a dense forest with a long gravel driveway leading up to it. There were no streetlights nearby, which made the nights incredibly dark. But I liked that. It made everything feel calm, almost timeless. One winter evening, after a long shift at work, I pulled into my driveway. The sky was covered in thick clouds, and the only light came from my car's headlights and the soft glow of the porch light I had left on that morning. As I stepped out, I caught a faint smell of cigarette smoke in the air. That was strange. I didn't smoke, and my closest neighbor was a retired couple who rarely had visitors. I glanced around, but the trees cast long, shifting shadows that made it impossible to see beyond a few feet. Telling myself it was nothing, I headed inside, locking the door behind me. I was exhausted, so after a quick dinner, I decided to take a shower and go to bed early. The hot water was soothing, and for a moment, I forgot about the strange smell outside. But as I stepped out of the shower, I had a sudden, uneasy feeling. You know that sensation when you're being watched? My bathroom window was small, placed high up on the wall, but I swear I saw something move outside. A shadow? A trick of the light? I wasn't sure, but I shook off the feeling and went to bed. Sometime later, I woke up suddenly. At first, I wasn't sure why, but then I heard it. A faint creaking noise from downstairs. My stomach twisted. The house was old, and it made plenty of noises. But this was different. This wasn't just the house settling. It was deliberate, slow movement. My first thought was that it was my friend, Tyler. He sometimes stopped by after work to use my shower before heading to his night classes, but he always texted me first. I reached for my phone, but the screen was so bright in the darkness that I had to squint. It was a little after 9 p.m. No new messages. I called out his name, hoping to hear a familiar voice. Instead, what I got was something else entirely. A heavy set of footsteps bolted through the lower floor. My heart pounded as I threw myself out of bed, sprinting to my closet. I barely had time to hoist myself up into the attic space before the intruder reached the second floor. I pressed myself against the cold wooden beams, trying to steady my breathing. Below me, my bedroom door slammed open. I could hear him moving, searching. The closet door creaked open beneath me. I held my breath. From my vantage point, I could only see his legs, dirty jeans, frayed at the bottom, and scuffed up work boots. He lingered there for what felt like forever, before finally stepping back. Then came the worst part. A loud crash, my bed being flipped over. A guttural, frustrated scream ripped through the house. It wasn't just anger. It was unhinged, primal. I had heard that kind of scream before, from someone on the edge of losing control. I could hear him storming through the hallway, shoving things over, tearing through the other bedroom looking for me. Then, something new, something I hadn't noticed before. From the attic, I could see down through the gaps in the floorboards. There were scratches on my closet ceiling, deep and jagged. Not fresh. They had been there for a while. Someone had been in this attic before, clawing at the wood, maybe even trying to break through. I felt sick. The noise downstairs eventually stopped. I dared to move. Climbing down as quietly as I could, I saw the damage. The whole house was trashed, furniture overturned, drawers yanked out, cabinets emptied. But the worst part? The only thing missing was a single kitchen knife. The police found signs that he had been watching my house for a while. Cigarette butts, scraps of foil, a discarded pen tube, signs of drug use. The side door had been forced open. They advised me to stay with someone else that night, but I didn't. Instead, I stayed up, flashlight in hand, checking the windows every few minutes. The next day, I had the locks changed. motion lights installed, and a security system put in. But I never truly felt safe there again. I lived in that house for 3 more years without incident, but every night, I practiced getting from my bed to the attic as fast as possible. And even now, in my new home, I still do it, just in case.